Hi. How did it go on Tuesday? Interesting project. Okay, great. So just to start, well, let me just say we're still in lectures 17 to 20. I'm going to, we've already kind of gone through the Udry, we had the Marshall lecture. I'm going to continue talking about poverty and witch killing, which we started last time, and towards the end of class today transition to talking about economic shocks and civil war, civil conflict, and instrumental variable methods, which some of you are familiar with, others aren't, but we're going to try to walk through those methods today and next lecture, and maybe even a little bit into the following lecture. So that's kind of the plan. The problem set 2 has been graded, as have the midterms. They'll be passed out at the end of class. Some of you have already gotten them in section. Pierre passed out one of his section graded problem sets in midterms. He's going to pass out the other one in his section later today, but he's going to pass out, for those of you in the Yang sections, after class he has them, he'll pass them out to you. The average on the problem set was about 8 out of 10, so similar to the first one, maybe a little higher. The average on the midterm was about 18 out of 30. It's curved, so it was a little bit too long. That's my fault. But there wasn't actually a ton. There's some variation, but not a massive amount. So that's what it is. Questions or comments on that? I think problem set 3. I think it's on the syllabus. I'll pass out next week, and it'll be due the following week, and it'll be a few weeks before the final. Okay. Great. So should we? Any other questions? Should we get back into it? Great. So let's talk about witch killing. I want to just for the first 5 minutes, just review some of the stuff that we started talking about last time, and then get into more of the results on the witch killing. I think I was sort of still setting it up, but just as a little bit of background, the district where the study took place is a poor rural district in western Tanzania. It's one of the poorest districts in Tanzania, so it's not at all a well-off area. Per capita income at the time was about $250 per year. As I started talking about last time, there's a widespread belief that when bad things happen, there are often people with sort of supernatural powers, you could put it, witches or traditional healers who have something to do with these outcomes, good or bad outcomes, that these can be manipulated, and that includes the weather, health, or other things. And this is just a picture of Meatu during sort of, I guess, right around harvest, so not during the rainy season. And the setting is important. This part of Tanzania is dominated by the Sukuma ethnic group, where traditional religious beliefs actually are still very strong, and the majority of the population is neither Christian or Muslim, which are the 2 major religions in the rest of Tanzania. There are still other parts of Tanzania where traditional religious beliefs are strong, but this is one of the sort of pockets of strongest traditional religious beliefs, where sort of witchcraft beliefs and that whole collection of understandings of the world are really wrapped up with traditional religious beliefs. And this isn't just some sort of benign belief. There are thousands of people who have been killed as witches in this part of Tanzania, as we talked about last time, including in our study area, where there's an annual risk of about 1 in 500 if you're an old woman of being killed as a witch. That's a very high, as we talked about last time. That is a very high annual murder rate, many, many times higher than a dangerous city in the U.S. So again, just a quick review of the summary stats from last time. If you go to that top arrow, the top row where it says mean, there's about 0.09 witch murders per village a year. So in other words, about once every 10 years or so in a village there's a witch killing. And this is in a village where there's only there's several hundred households in size. These are small areas. About once every 10 years there's a witch killing, and witch killings are about half of all murders. If you look at that second arrow where it says total murders. The other thing to note is that this is an area that's exposed to a lot of extreme weather. So about 1 in every 5 or 6 years, there's a drought or a flood that has a big effect on agriculture. We really tried to specify in the questions that we were talking about major weather shocks, not just like, oh, it rained a little more this year. So again, as I mentioned last time, this ties into a lot of the claims made in Bloom and Sachs and others that many parts of sub-Saharan Africa are just subject to a lot of natural climatic and weather variability. And it's a pretty poor area. Average years of schooling is only about 4, so that's low. And again, a very large fraction practice traditional religious beliefs. Per capita consumption, we actually did a very detailed survey to measure essentially income, and I think that was about $200 per year. So it's actually a little lower than the government figures. Part of that is we did not focus on the district capital, which is the better off part of the district. We really focused on the villages, and you would imagine the district capital would be a little bit wealthier, might drive up some of the average income. Okay, so again, we already discussed this last time, but really just at the end of lecture. What are some of the patterns? Who are the people who attack? They're mainly women. We're going to come back to that in a few slides. Why is that? We already speculated a little bit at the end of lecture last time. Victims come from poor households. So what we did when we collected the data in these villages, and what we did is we got together the village council, we got together other community leaders, and we sat down and sort of talked through a lot of different things with them for a couple hours. But whenever there was a village where there had been a witch attack, we asked about the characteristics of the most recent victim. And we said, okay, who was she? Where did she live? How well off was her family? Etc. And it turns out that the victims tend to come from poor families. So this is one of the world's poor countries, one of its poorest districts, in the pretty remote rural areas, in the poor households, in drought years. Those are people really living on the edge of survival. And I think that insight is really important to understanding what's going on here. It's also interesting that most of the victims are killed during what's called the hungry season, before the next harvest, when food has run out. So this is just some summary statistics on the characteristics of victims. I think I just got to this at the end of class last time. More than 2/3 of the victims come from households that the village council says is below average in terms of assets. So they tend to be poor. You can see 96% are female if you go to the top panel. Average age is almost 60. These are people with relatives in the village. Everybody, pretty much, 98%. Meaning, and this fits into the story that we started telling last time about how the anthropological claims by the anthropologists who have studied these attacks in Tanzania and other parts of East Africa claim that very often the attacks, or typically the attacks, are attacks that occur within families. These are not the image we have from sort of European history or whatnot, or Salem, where a village gets together and goes burns somebody else, who's a witch. These are typically acts committed by relatives against older women in the household in these incredibly dire economic circumstances, like in the middle of a drought, during the hungry season. Okay, so I think I just put this quote up at the end of lecture last time, right? So I'm not going to kind of read through it again, but it's just a story that illustrates one and the other books on this, where they have dozens of stories like this, accounts of people who survived, people who were driven out of the village. Actually, this woman would not be in our sample because she was not actually killed or physically attacked. She was going to be attacked, so she left. So the data that we have on the sort of, the rate of these attacks, or the risk of these attacks, is actually missing some people who actually flee before they're attacked. And this is the case where one of the grandchildren, this woman warned her she was about to be killed, so she ran away. And this sort of pattern of the elderly, especially, being attacked during periods of extreme resource scarcity is not something that's just found in Western Tanzania, again, as we said last time, but it's something that's found in many societies, in poorer societies, in periods of resource scarcity and resource stress. When there isn't enough food to go around in some Inuit communities, the elderly would be put on an ice floe, as I mentioned last time, and you actually find this in all regions of the world. That there are accounts by historians, by anthropologists, by sociologists, traditional customs and histories detailing how in dozens of societies in extreme periods, the elderly are basically sacrificed in order to preserve the, to make sure there's enough food for everybody else. And the same sort of logic might apply to other groups. The most obvious other group it might apply to would be very young children. If you're thinking that in these periods where there's not enough to eat, you would want to sacrifice those who are least productive, who aren't producing economically, they're eating but not producing, then you might think the very young and the very old would be the most likely victims, because they're not prime age workers. You would think the disabled would be another group that would be victimized during these periods, precisely because they may not be contributing as much to household income in periods of resource shortages. So what I think would be useful, this is I think just where I left off last time, is to go through this sort of formal discussion of why this sort of the economic logic behind what I just said. It's a very simple model, but I think it's just worth spending a few minutes talking through what resource allocation might look like within a household. So imagine we have a household with a certain number of people. We'll just say n people. In our data, the typical household has 6 or 7 people, let's say. Typical American household is smaller. And critically, in this kind of thought exercise, it's not even really a proper model as much as a thought exercise. Imagine when you're thinking about allocating resources in a poor setting. Well, first of all, most consumption in poor societies is food consumption. And that's true in our data. Something like 75% of what is consumed in our data is food. And there's a very strong relationship between the share of income that's consumed as food and overall income around the world. It's just an incredible empirical regularity. In very poor societies, people consume the majority of their income as food. And as they get richer, they consume lots of other things. So it turns out that a lot of what people are consuming is food, and part of the reason why you might understand a pattern like that is the fact that for human beings to survive, we actually need a certain minimum level of nutrition, basically just to keep our heart beating. So just to maintain what's called basal metabolism, sort of like base metabolism, just to keep your brain functioning, your heart beating, etc. Not even necessarily to give you calories needed to do strenuous work. You need a certain number of calories, and you can't really go below that for too long without jeopardizing your health. Obviously, you'd starve to death. So there's this sort of threshold that people need to meet, and we can call that consumption level C star here. That's just the notation. So imagine we're in a world where we have a certain amount of income in a household that we need to divide among n people in a household. Where the condition we need to be keeping in mind is we need to keep people above C star. So there's limits to how unequally we can distribute food within the household before jeopardizing people's health. Now, C star is going to be a function of many things. I didn't put it up there. If you're a baby, you need fewer calories, and if you're a 10-year-old, the 10-year-old needs fewer calories, and a 20-year-old, whatever. And then when you're older, you may need fewer calories again. There's some sort of life cycle. But let's say there's some age-appropriate C star in reality. But just to simplify things, we'll just imagine there's n similar people. Now imagine there's 2 types of years in the data. This is where it gets a little close to the actual data set in Tanzania. There's good years with normal rainfall, and those occur 82% of the time, based on the table I just showed you. And then there are bad rainfall years, drought years and flood years, and those occur 18% of the time. In the good years, imagine that the amount of income we earn, we're going to call that Y high, Y sub high, is large enough that we actually have earned enough to give everybody the calories needed for basal metabolism, n times C star. So the key number here for us is n times C star. If we have enough income that n times C star, everybody lives. If we don't have enough income for n times C star, we may be in trouble. And that, by assumption, again, this thought exercise, let's just say that's the case when there's a drought or a flood. So when there's a drought and my crops fail, I may not have enough. This is a very stark model. In reality, and we talked about some of these issues before, I have some savings, I have assets, things I could sell. I may have stored grain from the previous year. I have a grain store at home that I can tap into. I may be able to slaughter animals. I may be able to ask my friends, like in the Chris Udry case, to lend me money in this tough year, or to kind of ease the terms of my repayment. And maybe if I have a good year and you have a bad year and they kind of alternate over time, then it doesn't really matter if I have some of these Y low years, because when I have a Y low year, you have a Y high year, we kind of help each other out. So as long as the sum of my income and say my friend's income is large enough that everybody gets n times C star, we're okay. The problem again is when we have these correlated shocks in the village. The problem is when most people in the village are hit by this drought or the flood. In that case, maybe my social network is also hit, and a lot of us are at risk of falling below n times C star, right? And you would think, given the logic I just said, that this risk would be highest for the poorest households. They don't have the assets to sell off in a tough year. They don't have the bank accounts. So a lot of this is kind of lining up with the patterns we see among the witch victims, right? Who seem to be most at risk. So what does this mean? If we have a norm in normal times to divide food equally, we eat out of the same pot, everybody gets to eat what they want. That's sort of, the model where C equals Y high divided by N, which we've already assumed is greater than C star. But in bad years, if we use the same rule, this is less than C star. So our norm of equal division of food isn't going to work very well because it actually risks everybody dying. If we take the model literally, if you get C star, you live, and you get less than C star, you die. So imagine, the way it looks is just, imagine the probability that you survive that year looks like the following. It's 0 down here, and it's 1 here. That's kind of like the functional form I've assumed in the thought exercise. Of course, in reality, it's not quite as sharp. Different people have different C stars. Maybe it really looks like that, but for simplicity, this is okay. What should you do? What should whoever divides income in the household do? Divide the consumption in the household do? Yeah. You can't change C star, you can't change Y, you have to make lower N. Right. So if we can't get any help here, we can't get help from our friends or the government or anything, and this is a biological quantity, then we can modify N. And imagine in particular we're in a case, and we just put it over here, imagine there's a further inequality that holds. Imagine C star is less than Y low divided by N minus 1. So we're close to subsistence. In this case, reducing household size by 1 means everybody else can survive. That's the idea. And that's an economic model that could account in part for what's going on, maybe. It's speculative. But it's consistent with the patterns not just in these extreme drought years in Tanzania, but with all these other societies where in periods of extreme resource scarcity, you see people adjusting on this margin, household size. Now, another way to do it without killing people is to send people away. So the other thing I could do is we're in a drought year, I send my kids to live with my uncle in the city that year. That happens. That's another way to adjust. Another way to do it is certain people migrate to look for work. That happens in our data. So there's a lot of margins you could work on. But if for whatever reason you can't access those other margins, then basically eliminating someone from the household would be one way to go. And I think in thinking about the logic of this, it is interesting that there are actually lots of witch attacks that aren't murder. So people who are attacked or threatened, like the woman in the quote, who leave but are never killed. So maybe, from the point of view of the household, that's the best outcome. You scare someone away and they move to the regional capital where there's an NGO that'll help them out. There's another case, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's kind of fascinating. There's an anthropologist in England, in the UK, named Maya Green, who has studied witch attacks and witch accusations in another part of Tanzania, in southern Tanzania, who finds that similar pattern in these extremely difficult years, you have women being accused as witches, but they're typically not killed in that part of Tanzania. There are certain traditional healers who take them in those years, and then the traditional healers claim to cure them of being witches. They go through a bunch of cleansing rituals. All their hair is shaved. There's a whole series of purification rituals. And then however many months later, they're allowed to go back home having been cured of being a witch. Now, that makes sense from a religious point of view. In every religion, there are rituals of purification and seclusion, and it fits into our understanding of how religions organize themselves. But from the economic point of view, if it's the hungry season, and a few months later there's going to be a harvest, and people may get new jobs and more income, it's almost a social insurance mechanism to have these traditional healers that take people in during those periods. And what ends up happening typically is after this old woman has been cleansed, the family will pay the traditional healer something to thank them for the purification ritual. So it's like effectively a loan. The traditional healer feeds this woman for a few months, and the family pays them back. So, again, when you put everything in economic terms, that's why people hate economists. But there's a sort of logic to the transaction that is at least consistent with this model. You don't have to believe it. There's lots of other things going on, but there's something broadly consistent with an insurance arrangement that you might understand. That's in Ulanga region in southern Tanzania. So all the way on the other side of Tanzania. Let me pause for a second. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this isn't a set of attacks across households where poor households kill rich households. It's all being done within the same household. So they're already sharing things, they're living in the same compound, and then that kind of logic doesn't really apply. So it isn't really like banditry, it isn't like poor households looting or raiding rich households. That's not how it works. It's a private act. There's a famous Dutch anthropologist named Peter Geshere who calls witchcraft in sub-Saharan Africa the dark side of kinship. That's how he calls it, meaning it's the flip side to very intimate and close relationships. That witchcraft accusations very often happen among family and neighbors and people with whom you're very intimately related. So it isn't a poor household looking across at a rich household far away saying we're going to grab their stuff. That isn't the kind of mechanism as much. Yeah.
Well, it kind of reinforces itself over time because there's going to be a lot of poor households who don't make that choice of like go witch or chase law. But they'll see like another household they're like equally as chase off witch or kill witch and they'll look and see it work for them. We should be like just like reinforce that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that maybe people will say, well, the people who did this do better. Beyond that, there's another kind of general process that's worth keeping in mind when you think about it, which is what we call mean reversion. It's a statistical term. So, mean reversion just means if you have a statistical process with a certain mean, in the period following a very bad realization, on average in the next period, you're going to have a better realization, because it's very unlikely to have two really bad realizations in a row. So the people who kill witches, on average, things are going to get better for them next year. Not because they killed a witch, but just because there's mean reversion in the world. And so if you always respond to a bad outcome in a certain way, you will learn, you'll say, look, I'm observing the world. When I do this thing of attacking a witch or blaming it on witchcraft, things tend to get better. I don't want to mess it up. Let me keep doing this. Even though if you hadn't done it, it would get better. So doctors always say we overprescribe antibiotics because most infections are self-limiting and you probably get better anyway in 2 or 3 days. But if you kind of learn, oh, I'm sick, I need to take antibiotics, I need to take some medicine, and I know it makes me feel better, you're kind of getting the causal inference all wrong. Like you would have gotten better anyway. But you're used to always taking the antibiotic and you're afraid not to because you've learned that it's a good thing to do. So it's a bit like what you're saying, you're learning the wrong thing by observing the world. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, so this is a case where unequal division can actually make more people survive than equal division. And you might think if you're trying to figure out whom to target, you would want to keep the people alive who are very productive, who are going to harvest more crops the next period to make sure your per capita income is higher and you don't face the same risk next time. And that would be the argument for targeting people who are less productive. And again, the very old, the very young, the disabled, etc. would be the targets of attack. Now the difference between, say, a very old man or woman and a very young kid is, the young kid is going to be getting more productive over time. They're going to be able to have kids themselves over time, whereas the very old are have a different trajectory in life. So the kind of expected future productivity is very different for the old and young, even if in the very short run they're both equally unproductive. Okay, so what's the data that we use? And let me just go through the patterns. We have data for about a decade where we look at these major weather shocks. And the first thing we found in the data, we had gotten this consumption data I mentioned, household surveys, for a couple of years on consumption, 2001, 2002. So we got it over time a little bit. We also got it across all the villages. And the first thing we want to do is just show or test or make sense of the relationship between these extreme shocks and income and consumption. Basically to show that these rainfall shocks really are economic shocks. That was sort of the first step. And, it's time for a clicker question. Great. Before we get there. So here we go. The relationship between disease epidemics. So the one thing I haven't really talked about is disease epidemics. I'm talking about rainfall shocks. The other village calamity is what we call it, that comes through in the surveys that people talk about are disease epidemics. There were still measles epidemics in this district at the time. For instance, that was the most common one. There were still cholera epidemics at the time. So there were these infectious disease epidemics that would break out. And so this is the question. I'm anticipating the findings, but I want you guys to sort of speculate on why we're finding those findings, and then we'll talk about it. It turns out the relationship between witch killing and disease epidemics is weaker than the relationship between witch killing and rainfall shocks. So what is the most plausible explanation? A, is it the case that local religious beliefs hold that witches actually don't have power over disease? B, we can't really say much because the standard errors are really large, just the way our data works out. C, disease epidemics don't have a strong impact on local income levels. Or D, we just really don't know. It's ambiguous. Maybe there's multiple answers. Just go for another 10 seconds or something. Okay, so pretty spread. A bunch of you said A, religious beliefs don't hold that witches have power over disease epidemics. Actually, they do. So control over disease and health is one of the central, health of people and animals. In this part of Tanzania is one of the central powers witches are actually thought to have. So when people become ill, you immediately point to a witch for the bad health, as the cause of the bad health. B, the large standards. It's going to turn out standards are pretty tight. It's really C. That's why I put this clicker question here, because the next table is going to show that it turns out if you look at income levels, they're not very much affected by whether there's a measles epidemic that kills 10 kids in the village. But income levels are very strongly affected by rainfall. So there's an interpretation of the findings. This is an interpretation of the findings that goes